But I'm glad you're there. Jonathan, I want to get your take on Scalise. You're a good-hearted guy, and, we disagree on stuff. But do you think a guy, for going to one meeting 12 years ago, should be exiled from leadership?
There's not any real sort of fairness in politics, ultimately. It's all a damage control assessment by Republicans. So I think you have to kind of have separated into two questions. One is, should people be irreparably penalized for something that they did a long time ago? My usual answer to that is no. But if I were a leader of the Republican Party, would I be comfortable having him in a position of leadership? I'm not sure that I would be, because his explanation is not very good. He said that he was asked, why, or his office was asked, why didn't he find out about this group that he was addressing by Googling it? And he said that he didn't use Google in 2002, and it's not really plausible because he comes out of a computer science background, and it's just not likely that he was unfamiliar with Google 12 years ago. So, it does get down to particulars, and the gentleman that introduced him to this group, who has said in the last couple of days that he was a good friend of Scalise and neighbor of him, he's somebody with very, very troublesome connections. So for instance, he said, we didn't talk about race or the Jewish question.
Oh,
well, what the hell is the Jewish question?
Okay, now that's a red light. Obviously, if you heard Scalise say, I wasn't there to talk about the Jewish question, that'd be over. But Cedric Richmond, who's an African American congressman, Democrat, says, look, there isn't a racist bone in this guy's body. And I kind of believe that. I do believe you can. Have you ever ended up, I told in the first segment, Jonathan, I ended up, my affiliate booked me onto a stage 10 years ago with just a wacko. Not a racist, but just a wacko. And I was very uncomfortable, but I didn't know it walking in. And I wonder if the one meeting rule takes hold in D.C., how many people are going to be eligible to be leaders?
I agree with you on that, and I'm not a big believer in guilt by association. I think it's just too easy a shot to take. I guess I would be in the camp that said that, he should not be removed from his position over this. But I do also think that there's a carelessness sometimes, especially since there's a lot of finger pointing at the left over associations with Reverend Wright or Al Sharpton or whoever you want to mention, and a lot of finger pointing that so-and-so can't be trusted because they're dealing with so-and-so. And, if you're going to point those fingers, then you need to be careful about your own associations. And
now you made a preemptive strike on my best talking point, which is the Reverend Al's been to the White House 61 times, and he's Mr. Crown Heights and all these other things. But 61.
So I don't really think that the Reverend Al, who's a colleague of mine at MSNBC and, somebody that I've been critical of in certain respects, I don't think he's comparable to David Duke. It's really not a fair comparison. And that people, especially since in recent years, Sharpton, has been trying to clean up his act. And I'm a big believer in what people do in the more recent past, whether they try to, redeem themselves a little bit. And Sharpton
that's a fair
really
standard.
has.
That's a fair standard. And I think you'd look at Scalise if he'd gone there last year. After you're in the House, but I'm not. I
think that's a very important point. That 12 years, it's a big difference. I'm not one of those people who believes people should be penalized for what they do, many years earlier, unless it's of grievous seriousness. It's one of the reasons why my wife and I argue about this all the time. Once Al Sharpton apologized on Oprah for his role in the Tawana Brawley case, I saw him in a somewhat different light. That was, over 20 years ago, and he acted dishonorably in that situation, but I'm not prepared to, hang it around his neck forever. And I guess the same would apply to Scalise.
All right, that's